Hi everyone, my name is Emma Darnell, and this is my final reflection, final presentation for GRC 315. Starting with my illustrator presentation, I chose Soy Milk, a Korean American contemporary artist. She mostly does paintings, but she does dabble in a couple other mediums as well, and her style mostly focuses on surrealism and topics of feminism and intimacy. Sorry. Alright, and then I chose Soy Milk because I've actually seen quite a few pieces from her before, so I was interested to learn more. And then moving on to our first project, Aesop's Fables. For my story, I chose The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. Starting with my thumbnail sketches up in the top middle. From these sketches, I ended up doing number 3, 4, and 5. And then to the right of my thumbnail sketches, I only was able to fit one of my progress photos, but they all kind of were at that same stage where I just had done the outline. And then at the bottom here is my 3 finished pieces. I did these in Micron ink pens, and I actually really enjoyed this project. The first illustration is not my favorite just because I had a little bit of trouble with the perspective, but the second and third one turned out really good. I do think the second one maybe could have used a little bit more shading, more detail, just to add some more realism, but I think this was a really good start for me dabbling in ink and kind of like illustration, traditional illustration. And then moving on to our comic book illustration. This project was probably the most difficult for me this semester. I was going through a bit of a rough patch around this time, and this also being my first time doing a comic book, I definitely had some struggles, but I worked through them, and I am somewhat happy with how this project turned out. But starting with the perspective photo, I was actually pretty proud of this. The only part I didn't like was how my character looked. I couldn't get her head to look right. She just looks a little wonky, but I really like how the rest of the image turned out. And then this was the starting point for my comic book. Moving on to the character design, I was really pleased with how my character design turned out. However, it was a little bit hard to kind of move the chibi style into a active comic. I do think I made it work though. And then I really love how the colored version of my characters turned out. The professor did critique me that the colors were a little bit dull, which I agreed on. So I did try and fix that within the actual comic strip itself, and I think that turned out pretty good. And then in the bottom right is my finished comic. I'm really pleased with how the first half turned out. The bottom half, I feel like it looks a little bit flat. I do think I rushed the bottom part a little bit. So I think if I spent more time on this one, I could have added a lot more detail and just made the scenes a little bit more full of depth, I guess. I also really don't like how I did the title. It doesn't really match the comic strip, or it feels just a bit empty in the corner, so I definitely think I would go back in and adjust that now. Or moving on to the next slide, this was the splash page. This title I was much more happy with. I definitely think had I gone back, I would have revised the comic title to the same as this one, and I think this splash page is probably one of my favorite illustrations I did this semester. This one turned out really good. and I was just really pleased with how this one turned out. I think this one turned out a lot better than the actual comic, but this is around the point where I had kind of cleared things up in my life, so I had a bit more time to focus on what I wanted to do for this assignment. Alright, and then moving on to our final project, the sculpture. For my original character, I ended up doing a kind of like this little like round pig. And I only included the front view just because I was having trouble fitting all the pictures on here. But and then in the middle, I had added my progress photo, which it kind of just looks like a blob, but trust the process because the final turned out really cute. I was really happy with how this project turned out as well. I had a lot of fun doing this. It was definitely a process working with the polymer clay too, just because this piece was about 5 inches tall and like 3 inches wide, so it was really thick. It took a really long time to bake, and then it cracked in the oven. So I definitely had some ups and downs, but I was able to fix everything, and it turned out really, really cute. I even used chalk pastel to kind of add some blush on the cheeks, and then I added kind of the blush on like the feet and the arms, like I had done in the original sketch. And yes, I think this one turned out almost exactly like how I was envisioning. If I were to change anything, I think I would maybe make the arms a little bit smaller, but that's about it. And then my conclusion for this course, I really enjoyed this course this semester. I've mostly dabbled in digital illustration, so this was the first doing traditional illustration, like to this extent. And I definitely think it helped me grow as an artist, because traditional illustration is really like the base to becoming an artist. Like, behind all digital art skill is built in traditional art. So I definitely think this class helped me strengthen my art skills, and I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this class. But yes, that's all for my reflection on this semester. Thank you.